Welcome to the Flightcast, a place where opinions aren't right or wrong, and where we can agree or disagree about movies, TV, and other assorted media because it's all subjective. My name is Ray. Thank you so much for joining me. This isn't going to be a terribly long episode because I've got one major thing to talk about. And sorry, Anthony, it's box office related. But seriously, this is... we got to talk. We have to talk about what happened on this particular day. This was almost an episode of Flight Alert. Almost. But it's not necessarily an alert in terms of big, huge news, earth-shattering news, because it's not earth-shattering. It's just the indication of a trend in Hollywood that a lot of people really need to start accepting, lest they want to continue looking like Boo Boo the Fool, but that's entirely up to them. But before diving headfirst into today's topic, I want to remind everybody that you can find this show and all of my other shows at theflightcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts, whether it is Apple Podcasts, whether it is the Flightcast YouTube page at youtube.com/theflightcast, whether it is Spotify, whether it is Pandora, or whatever podcatcher you use. You can find this show on Tuesdays. You can find whatever show I decide to do on Thursdays, which right now I'm tracking, hopefully to be Creature Commandos, or hoping to be Flightbox rather, because I'm going to talk about Creature Commandos on Thursday because I need to watch that show before Peacemaker Season 2 starts next week, because I am going to talk about that show as it goes on throughout its second season, right? Because of its implications on the DCU. And of course, I'm also still talking about Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I talked about the first 4 episodes of that Season 3 about a week or so ago on Flightbox. So stay tuned for those on Thursdays. And then, of course, the weekend is reserved for flight reviews whenever I review movies, and also, I should say, Flight Chat, which is our feedback show, our listener feedback show. Now, there are 2 movies that I do want to see this upcoming weekend. I will endeavor to see them. There's Nobody 2, and then there is Highest to Lowest, the new Spike Lee Denzel Washington film. We'll see how that works out with my schedule. But you may get those episodes of Flight Review this weekend, and also Flight Chat, our listener feedback show, on the weekend as well. So stay tuned for those. That is the schedule right now for all the shows at theflightcast.com. And of course, also want to take a moment to thank all the very loyal supporters of patreon.com/theflightcast. I posted another ranty episode about a flight speed yesterday on the way home from the gym with respect to some social media manipulation and how the algorithms really play with our minds and really push us into discussions that are just completely silly and inane, but we feel compelled to defend ourselves or to, try and impart our wisdom to other people who really aren't actual people, and just how that goes about, ruining the discourse or altering it in many ways that it probably shouldn't be altered in that regard. But there's that, plus other episodes of Flight Speed, plus bonus episodes of Friday Flight, Flight Review, Flight Box, Flight Report, and I do need to do some more episodes of those because I've got comics I need to read, I've got movies I need to watch, I've got TV shows that you've probably already seen that I need to watch as well. So stay tuned for more bonus content at patreon.com/theflightcast. Hope that all of you there are enjoying the bonus content that is there, nearly 200 pieces of it, and as always, I cannot thank you enough for your support to the Flightcast Patreon network. Alright, let's get into it. Earlier today, James Gunn and the official Superman account announced that Superman will be released digitally this Friday. That's right, August 15th is when you can buy it, not rent apparently, but buy it. In fact, let's go to the Apple apparatus right now and see exactly how it's listed on my end. So here it is. If you want to pre-order Superman digitally for home viewing starting this Friday, you can do so for the low price of $29.99. That's right, $30. $30 will get you home access to Superman this upcoming Friday, August 15th, and that is to buy, not to rent, and that is after what will be 35 days of release. Pretty short window, and in the past, many people have proclaimed this a death knell, if it's coming out on digital that fast, and clearly it underperformed and they're trying to recoup their losses. Yeah, that lazy bullshit has been parroted for the last number of years by a lot of box office aficionados and people who think they know everything about filmmaking, and they really don't know shit, to be honest with you. And that's where I'm at with all of this, to be honest with you guys. I'm just going to preface this. This episode's going to be a little ranty, because I'm all about dispelling stupid narratives, and we have some really stupid narratives, and unenlightened disinformation to, set fire to and torch in this particular episode with respect to the fact that this movie is coming out on digital release 35 days after its theatrical release started. So first, let's dispel the notion that this is too soon. Like, because that's the biggest thing that I've seen. Like, wow, this should have been longer. I would have liked 8 weeks. How come they couldn't? This is too short of a window. What's going on here? Well, then I would ask you this question. If you believe that 35 days is too short a window for Superman, then do you believe 34 days is too short of a window for Jurassic World Rebirth? Because that movie, released digitally, after 34 days of release, and then 6 days later, hit the 800 billion mark in global gross, right? In fact, did it pull back ahead of Superman domestically? No, it did not. It's still behind Superman domestically because Superman's at 332, Jurassic World Rebirth is at 327 and some change. So it's still going to finish probably behind Superman domestically. But the point is that 34 days of release and Universal said, all right, throw it up for digital. And they likely did the same thing. In fact, let's check the listing for that real quick. The purchase price is the same for Jurassic World Rebirth, $29.99, but you can also rent it now for $19.99. Now, whether or not they made that simultaneously available at the same time, and maybe that's what will happen. Maybe what will happen is on the 15th, this Friday, Superman will be made available for both purchase and rental. But right now, for pre-order, it's only available for pre-order if you're buying the damn thing. And listen, more than a few people have pre-ordered it, right? The hype is there with respect to people that are excited to own a digital copy of this film and watch it in the comforts of their own home at their leisure without having to, go to the movie theater and whatnot. Well, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but just to further dispel this notion that 35 days is too soon, it wasn't too soon for Jurassic World Rebirth, and whatever people think of it critically, people think of it subjectively as far as being a better or worse film than Superman, the fact of the matter is, it has been well publicized by a lot of people that it has been financially more successful, right? Because we keep hinging on that global gross. Oh, look at how much better the dinosaurs did overseas than the superheroes. Yes, we've all heard that over the last month. And that movie, despite all the money that it's made overseas, over 400 million, decided to release digitally after 34 days. So if you have an issue with Superman releasing too early, then that means you have an issue with Jurassic World Rebirth releasing too early. But I don't hear a whole lot of people complaining about that now, do I? Well, Ray, that's just one movie and it's universal, right? It doesn't matter because this really isn't part of a trend. These are very unique circumstances and Jurassic World already made its money. Yeah, okay, all manner of excuses and platitudes just to suit your narrative about Superman being a failure, which is a bullshit narrative. It's been bullshit from opening weekend. But hey, let's just say that there was something to it. Maybe this was a one-off, right? Maybe Universal just lost its head and decided to release Jurassic World Rebirth digitally too early. Okay, how about Minecraft? That released digitally on May 13th, after being theatrically released on March 30th. So that's what, day 40? Day 40 of release, theatrically, was when Minecraft was released digitally. And that movie finished just around $45 million shy of $1 billion. So for all the scoreboard watchers out there, for all the lowest common denominator ridiculous discourse people that hold $1 billion as the benchmark, as delusional as that is, for any movie in Hollywood, I don't give a shit if it's Marvel or not, all of those people should have been furious with Minecraft's digital release 40 days later because that kept it from making $1 billion, didn't it? Or maybe $1 billion isn't the benchmark. Oh, what a crazy idea. Maybe these studios actually are rational. Maybe these studios actually have experts and, people who do this for a living that just might know a bit more about the industry than any one of us fans, right? Those people seem to understand that, hey, you know what? Let's throw Minecraft out there digitally and see what happens after 40 days of release. And they didn't pull it from theaters either. Minecraft was in theaters for 90 days, right? 90 days of release. So it's not like digital all of a sudden was the death knell for anything that it made, right? And sure, it got to the point where it was making only like, into the, 5 figures, like 63,000, 88,000, 32,000 on one day. The final day, I believe, was July 2nd. It made $1,980, right, on a Wednesday in the United States, right? I'm looking at domestic numbers with respect to this, but they kept that thing in theaters for as long as they could simultaneously. And that's a Warner Brothers movie, I might add, right? So this is not a death knell for Superman in theaters, right? They're going to keep it in theaters for as long as they think they're going to turn a profit. Let's see, how long was it? How long was Sinners run? Remember that that movie came out in April, and that movie just recently finished last month its theatrical run. How long was that? 91 days, according to Box Office Mojo. I'm getting all these counts from Box Office Mojo. So 91 days Sinners was in theaters. It concluded its theatrical run on July 17th, right? Last day of its release, it made $8,000 on a Thursday, right? On July 18th. 91 days of release. It was released digitally on June 3rd, right? So that's 47 days of release. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's longer than 34 or 35 days. Yes, that's true. But remember, I said it was in theaters for 91 days. So it stayed in theaters for another whole month or more, month and a half after the digital release, right? And again, another Warner Brothers film. So anybody out there that is treating this digital release date as just the death knell for Superman in theaters, you're out to lunch. That you're out to lunch as far as the data is concerned. The data does not support your assumption that Superman will vanish from theaters right after this digital release on Friday. It's not doing that. And to be clear, the last, like yesterday, Monday, and these are domestic numbers I'm looking at again, daily numbers, it made $991,491 yesterday, according to Box Office Mojo, right? This is on a Monday, okay? So we're still a ways away from getting to, a couple $1,000s like Sinners and Minecraft did at the end of their run. So we could still be talking about a lengthy run in theaters for Superman. And I bring this up because, again, I'm dispelling this narrative initially that this was too soon to release it on digital. Warner Brothers has done this already, right? They've done this already with Minecraft, their biggest hit of the year, right? Isn't that still the most money they've made in a film all year, right? And they've done it with Sinners, and it has worked to their desire, and now Universal's doing the same thing, right? So this is becoming the industry standard, guys. Okay, we're not talking 3 months anymore, right? We're not talking even 2 months, right? Not 90 days, not 60 days. We're talking 34, 35 days before it is released digitally. It's not too soon. This is now the industry standard. And why is 30 to 45 days now the industry standard, Ray? What's going on with that? Well, I'll tell you what it is, guys. You got to go all the way back to 2020 and more specifically 2021. Remember, as I've been saying for the last couple of weeks, Hollywood's box office parameters have changed, right? Our discussion needs to change along with them. What do the experts say? One more time, I'll remind everyone what the experts in the Hollywood Reporter article I cited a couple of weeks ago said. Hollywood will not get to pre-pandemic box office numbers until after 2029. And, barring the end of the world or anything else more catastrophic that affects all of our ability to go see a movie in the next 4 years, who knows, right? It's still going to be about 3-4 years away before we get to that level, right? And we're talking about, all of the pre-pandemic stuff that people keep wanting to hold the current movie's feet to the fire on, right? Everybody's thinking, not everybody, but a lot of people that are not reframing this discussion, they're thinking about the Avengers movies, they're thinking about Marvel, they're thinking about Captain Marvel, they're thinking about Black Panther, they're thinking about everything that made $1 billion. And of course, as a nice little, like, hey, just to show you it's not all about 2020, look at Spider-Man No Way Home, look what that did, look what Deadpool and Wolverine did last year. And then, of course, next year they'll be like, well, look at what Spider-Man Brand New Day did, look at what Avengers Doomsday did. Yeah, that's what they're counting on. But the fact of the matter is, all it proves is that box office is a crapshoot. As I've been saying for a while, and as people have been telling, any rational individual has been telling people for however many years. But unfortunately, the discussion has been very lazily constructed. And I posted earlier on Threads that perhaps one of the worst things that happened to comic movies is that any of them made $1 billion. Because that's absolutely destroyed any rational discussion with respect to box office going forward for any of these films. The fact of the matter is, COVID-19 changed everything in 2020. And the way the studios responded to it after they had an entire year of their inventory decimated where people literally could not go to the theaters to see it, in 2021 they all responded differently. Remember what Universal did? Universal for a little bit said, hey, 17 days. We're going to give them an exclusive window of 17 days in theaters, and then we're going to throw it up for PVOD and VOD right after that. So that's 2.5 weeks. Universal was playing around with the idea of releasing their movies digitally 2.5 weeks later. And Paramount was playing around with that for a little bit too. And then Paramount even extended that to 45, if I remember correctly, for certain films, right? But that's what they were playing around with at first, 17 days. Warner Brothers said, okay, no, we're not doing that. But here's what we are going to do. All 17 of our theatrical releases for 2021 are going to be day and date, which means you can either go to the theater or you can watch them on HBO Max. It is your choice. And that's the move that pushed Christopher Nolan out of Warner Brothers. Actually, he left, flipping them all off with double birds. He left and ran and took Oppenheimer with him to Universal, right? Remember that? Remember how that happened, right? Remember how Warner Brothers still kind of paid for that? And that's why we can't judge the Suicide Squad's gross evenly. That's why we can't look at any of the Wonder Woman 1984, any of the movies back then in that period is like, well, that's not fair to look at box office and compare them to the others because of how skewed the numbers were with respect to day and date and the COVID-19 effect, right? And then there's Disney. Remember what they did? Remember how they said, okay, listen, we're not going to do day and date. We're not going to do 17 days. What we're going to do is we're going to allow our Disney Plus customers to pay $30 or actually $29.99. Wow, $29.99. That's a very common price point for Hollywood, isn't it? $29.99, and it will get you access to the brand new movie the day of its release. And we're going to call it Premiere Access. If you don't feel safe going to a movie theater, pay us $30 and we'll let you watch the brand new movie in the comforts of your own home on Disney Plus. And right after that, ScarJo sued them over Black Widow. Emma Stone reportedly was going to sue them over Cruella, and allegedly Emily Blunt was going to sue them over Jungle Cruise. I don't know whatever happened with that, but yeah, lawsuits abound because the actors are like, you just cost me money. Like all the money that we could have made theatrically, like that's going against my contract, and you're not counting the streaming numbers because they weren't. Bob Chapek and Disney Plus, they weren't counting the streaming numbers against the actual box office gross because they were creating the dividing line, but they were pocketing all the money. And they made a good, I think, 50, 60 million. I forget how much exactly they made with respect. I think it might have even more than that with respect to Premiere Access. So Black Widow's actual monetary gain was higher, and so is the case for Cruella. But the point is that this was how the studios were dealing with the after effects of the COVID-19 pandemic decimating the industry for a year. And then the year after that, that was a very tense and like contentious CinemaCon, right? CinemaCon, for people who don't know, that's the event where all of the studios present to the exhibitors their new slate for the year, right? And the idea is that you're supposed to be schmoozing Regal and AMC and Imagine and all these other theater companies, right? Like, here, let's get you excited and hyped up for the movies that are going to be premiering at your theaters in the following year. And I remember reading the articles about how contentious and how tense and how pointed a lot of the questions were, and how the exhibitors really didn't trust any of the studios because they had spent an entire year trying to screw the exhibitors over, right? Because all those moves that I mentioned did nothing but hurt the theaters, right? And for people that are like, well, this kills theaters even further. No, COVID-19 killed theaters. COVID-19 literally decimated theaters, literally closed theaters down. And the studios were content with being able to do that further. They're like, you know what? No, we've got to transition. And they bit hard and knee-jerked really quickly to the other side, especially after, like, theaters started closing down. My favorite theater, one of my theaters that I grew up with, the Star Southfield AMC. Like, that was a theater, I've talked about it before. My Aunt DK took us to see The Mask there, saw Independence Day there, saw Men in Black there, saw a ton of classic films there. That film shuttered its doors after 2020. The pandemic killed it for good. That building is still sitting empty 5 years later. It's sad. It's really depressing. And there's theaters all across the country that are never going to reopen again as a result of COVID-19. And so the theaters freaked out on that. And the studios freaked out on that. And when they did their little power play moves in 2021, it pissed off the exhibitors. It pissed off all the theater owners. And so that was a very contentious year where it was like, okay, no, now we got to make peace, right? And remember, this is a couple years before the strikes, before the writer's strike and the actor's strike from last year, right? This is before that, right? So the owners have to break bread and make peace with the theater owners. And this is part of that, guys. This idea of, okay, we're going to release simultaneously 34 to 40 days after theatrical release. This is part of that olive branch because the theaters are still going to make their money. First of all, they still made their money in the first 3 or 4 weekends of the film, and now they're going to continue because it's not like any of these studios are pulling the movie. Superman is not being pulled from theaters on August 15th. Just like Minecraft wasn't pulled from theaters on May 13th, just like Sinners wasn't pulled from theaters on June 3rd, right? All of these movies are going to remain in theaters. Jurassic World Rebirth 2, that's still in theaters, right? Like I said, crossed 800 million the other day after being out on digital for like weeks at this point, right? So all of the exhibitors and all the theater chains get to keep the theatrical run going, while now we get to do this double dip. Studios, that is, gets to do this double dip, and it's like, okay, listen, those of you who have been seeing Superman multiple times in the theater, like yours truly, I've seen it 4 times in the theater. Hey, guess what? You pay $30 pre-order or $19.99 on the day of release, and you can rent that sucker to watch in the comfort of your own home to your heart's content, especially if you buy it, right? Now, of course, there's all sorts of contention, with respect to, well, you're buying it digitally for $30, but do you really own it? No, you don't really own it. It's still property that they can change at any point point in time. That's why I'm not pre-ordering it at $29.99, because I already have the 4K Steelbook that releases in September pre-ordered, and that's going to come with a digital code. But I will have the physical copy that they can't change or alter at any point in time. Not that they necessarily would, but just saying. But either way, plenty of impatient people that have gone to the theater multiple times to see Superman can now own it on Friday, and that's extra money in the pocket, right? And that's in addition to the people that are going to continue to see it theatrically. And if you don't believe that people are going to continue to see Superman theatrically, I mean, look at the buzz, look at the conversation surrounding it, and then look at what I've already told you in terms of how much money, like how long it took for Sinners and Minecraft to start making only in the couple thousands of dollars. It took Sinners like 90 days, right? It took Minecraft around the same time in that regard, right? And we're now at what? 32 days. Today, right now, is the day of me recording this, is day 33 of Superman's release. Now, I don't know if it's going to be in theaters for 90 days. I do know it's not coming out of theaters anytime soon. So more people are still going to see it theatrically, and you're going to see that number creep up. You're going to see that number keep going, right? Like, this digital is not just going to be this death knell, like, oh, well, it's digitally released. Nobody needs to go see it in theaters anymore. No, plenty of people will still go see it in theaters, right? Because at this point, everybody that was going to see it originally in theaters has already seen it, but other people is like, oh, well, what's the hoopla? Can we go still see this? And not everybody watches movies digitally. Not everybody is going to buy this movie for $30 digitally. A lot of people, especially those who still apparently live in the world of AOL dial-up, which they just announced they're going to discontinue later this month, because apparently there are people out there that still use dial-up internet. Those people that want to see a Superman movie, they're going to go to the theater, more than likely. So this whole freak out that people are talking about, no, logistically speaking, it's not there, guys. The data does not support your freak out. It doesn't. It does not support it whatsoever. And this is the olive branch. This is the move, the double dip. This is the treaty, if you will, that the studios are making with respect to the exhibitors, right? They're like, no, we're going to keep the movie in your theaters, but we're also going to start this double dip, and we're also going to talk about, moving into the home release and the digital release window with respect to that. And for those of us waiting for physical media, yeah, we're still waiting until September. We're waiting until September. And hey, just for that, because I know somebody out there is like, well, Ray, if it's physically coming out in September, then that's got to be the end of the theatrical run, right? Well, here, let's check this for a second. I was one of the fortunate individuals that when I pre-ordered Sinners, my pre-order actually came in on time. I know that was not the case for a lot of people. I know that their pre-orders were delayed. Some of them might still be delayed depending on where you ordered it from. Mine was not delayed. Mine arrived on time. I'm not bragging about that. I'm just making a point here. Sinners' theatrical run ended, as I said earlier, on July 17th. And my 4K Steelbook was picked up on July 8th. Right? When it arrived on time. July 8th was the date that it was originally set for release, and I got it on time. All right, so that's what? Week and a half? Week and a half, 9 days of separation. Now, my Superman 4K Steelbook still doesn't have an estimated release date yet, but I'm seeing September 23rd is the release date being, thrown about here for the 4K and Blu-ray copies of the film. So September 23rd. So, all right, let's realistically say that perhaps Superman's theatrical run could end at the end of September. September 30th. All right. That's 81 days of release, guys. 81 days that Superman will have been out in theaters if it follows the Sinners plan, right? And here, just for shits and giggles, let's see what Minecraft did as well. A Minecraft movie was released on Blu-ray on June 24th and ended its theatrical run a little over a week later on July 2nd. Same thing. Same exact thing, guys. This is the industry standard. This is the Warner Brothers standard in that regard, right? And one more time, the Minecraft movie was released for 90 days. So we're talking 90 days of release for the Minecraft movie that was released digitally at 40 days. We're talking 91 days of release for Sinners that was digitally released at 47 days. And now Superman, 35 days of release for digital, right? And we're tracking, if it's a week after the September 23rd date when the Blu-ray comes out, 81 days, right? So that's what? Okay, 9 days shy of both Minecraft and Sinners. But still, you get the point. You understand. Stop freaking out. Like, seriously, the conversation surrounding this, and I don't know if anybody listening to this is freaking out, but I'm just giving you data points here to give you an idea of exactly what Warner Brothers is doing and why Warner Brothers is doing it and why they feel like it's a successful model for them to try and leverage both theatrical and streaming. or in this case, digital. Because at the end of the day, it's abundantly clear that Warner Brothers and these other studios don't believe in this fictitious war between theatrical and digital, theatrical and streaming. And make no mistake, there is a fictitious war out there because I've seen plenty of comments out there like, this is killing theaters. I can't believe they do this. This is too soon. And there's all these narratives and all of this fan service. And more than ever, like all this box office talk has just reinforce the notion that fans are the one that, get all in their emotions and want to drive all these narratives to make certain that they sound right or to make certain that they, can feel right about whatever it is that they're thinking, right? Their predictions are going to be right. So all these people that get out there and say, "Oh, well, Superman is clearly a failure if it's coming out on digital this fast," right? Ignoring every piece of data that I've given you so far, ignoring all the other case studies with respect to what Warner Brothers has done, ignoring Jurassic World Rebirth and what that's done, right? Ignoring all of that, and then ignoring the changing landscape of box office in general. And it just goes to show you that this fictitious war between theatrical and digital is exactly that, fictitious. Why are we putting one at odds with one another? Because there are those of us that don't want to lose the theatrical experience. And as I have said, even when we started talking about the theatrical experience potentially being in danger, I said, no, what's going to happen is theaters are always going to be around. They're just going to evolve and they're going to become more niche. And it's going to be a case where the money that we're talking about with respect to what a film earns is going to be split between what it does theatrically and that windfall and that crapshoot windfall and what it does digitally and home release, and certainly as far as subscribers to any of the streaming services, because Superman obviously will end up on HBO Max at some point, just like Jurassic World Rebirth is destined for Peacock at some point, whatever future that particular app holds. I keep seeing, like articles proclaiming the death of Peacock. It'll be taking a dirt nap pretty soon. It's not long for this world. And I've said that any studio that ditches their app at this point, it's like ditching a channel, right? You're not just tossing away an app, you're actually like getting rid of your your entryway into the evolution of media, right? You don't get away from the internet when you're migrating toward it in that regard. But all that beside the point. The fact of the matter is that this is the evolution of everything. This is where we're headed. And if you want to be doom and gloom about it and you want to act like this is the end of theaters, I mean, that's your business, but it's clearly not the end of theaters. This is the negotiation. This is the go-between in this regard. And what it really comes down to, guys, is we have to reframe the conversation. We have to reframe the box office conversation. We have to reframe the earnings conversation. And a lot of this isn't just because of fan narratives. A lot of this is also because of how it's reported, because it's easy to report box office. It's easy to report ticket sales because those are reported, I mean, by the studios, but they're also reported by other sources, right? By the exhibitors themselves, right? Oh, we sold this many tickets. We sold that many tickets, right? And it's easy to really cultivate scoreboard mentality with respect to that. It's such an easy thing to do, not just for fans and not just for those of us in these circles, but also for reviewers, for people at Forbes, for all the box office aficionados. It's the easiest thing to market. And what's going to have to happen now is those articles are going to have to start including the home sales, going to have to start including the digital sales. Like that's part of the business with respect to that. And again, I've mentioned before when it comes to the box office of these films, Superman in particular, and also Fantastic Four, if you don't hear David Zaslav or James Gunn or Peter Safran freaking out, like or panicking, like in any moment, then what are you worried about? Did Supergirl get shelved? No, Supergirl is proceeding. And here's another angle to think about this, right? We know that the DCU is proceeding forward. The launch went off without a hitch. It did. Whether you think it did or not doesn't matter. They believe that it did. And they are proceeding as planned. So this is literally what we wanted back in the DC Films days with Zack Snyder. We wanted this. We wanted them to stick to the plan. We didn't want them to make knee-jerk decisions. Superman has performed well enough, financially and socially, right, in other areas, for them to say we're sticking with the plan. Or for at least for David Zaslav to say, I'm going to let them cook. I'm going to let my boys at DC Studios cook. I'm going to let them go. All right, cool, awesome. And he reiterated, hey, we've got Peacemaker Season 2. We've got Supergirl. He didn't say that, but he did say Supergirl and Clayface because he's all about the movies. But consider this as well. With respect to marketing, we talked about this on Vodka Stream the other night, about how the DC Studios marketing engine, like the machine, really hasn't stopped. They've kept going. They've kept putting out behind-the-scenes clips. James Gunn has got that podcast he's doing with his wife and Steve McGee, revisiting season one of Peacemaker and, revealing to everybody what is canon and what isn't with respect to the DCU going forward from season one. I'm going to be one of those people that's just going to wait for season two, and go from there because I really don't need all of the minutiae in that regard. I'm curious about a few things, but I'm pretty certain I know I have a good educated guess on how things are going to go. And there are certain things that I hope become canon, but we'll find out. But we know that there's going to be things that we're not going to find out until Peacemaker season two, whether they're canon or not going forward. And I'm okay with that. But consider this. Consider that Peacemaker season 2 releases on August 21st, right? We're talking about a week and a half from now, from the time of me recording this episode. And now Superman is open to digital release and rental this upcoming Friday. So now that means that anybody that didn't go see Superman in theaters can watch it at home and then prepare for Peacemaker and HBO Max on August 21st. And lo and behold, James Gunn has even posted that. And he didn't necessarily say that, hey, you can watch Superman in preparation on a digital release in preparation for Peacemaker. But what he did say earlier today on Threads is, in preparation for Peacemaker season 2, you can first see Superman, which lays the groundwork of the DCU, and then you can watch season 1 of Peacemaker and this podcast. This week we're rewatching episode 6, right? Because it's part of the rewatch show that they're doing. But yeah, this is part of the marketing machine that DC Studios is doing. And I've already talked about how, this is head and shoulders above anything that DC Films could even have thought to have attempted with respect to marketing. And now they're going even further. They're just keeping the ball rolling, man. They're just keeping it going. They're rolling Superman directly into Peacemaker season 2. So now it's a case of you've got options. You can still go to the theater and see Superman, and people are going to go still see it at the theater. It's not going to be as much as it has in the last however many weeks, but people are still going to go to the theater to see Superman as long as it's still open and still has screens, and Warner Brothers are going to keep it there. Based on Sinners and based on Minecraft, they're going to keep it there as long as they possibly can, as long as they think it's feasible to in that regard, right? But people are going to either see it that way or they're going to see it digitally, and then they're going to go to HBO Max and they're going to see Peacemaker season 2. And this is all going to start building out and fleshing out the DCU for us and for them. This is part of the marketing approach. Hey, this is the universe that we're building. Because remember, our TV shows and our animated series like Creature Commandos and whatnot, and our movies are all connected. And they don't have to be, they're not required homework. But if you really want to watch all of it, here's what you can do, right? That's how he's building this so far in that regard. And so that's also a part of this, with respect to the idea of releasing Superman digitally before Peacemaker season 2 arrives on HBO Max. Because it's still going to be a minute, right? And again, he never said that that Superman was going to be released on HBO Max this soon. No, that's not what's happening. Like, it's going to be released, and that's another interesting thing to look at. How soon was it? Like, when was Sinners released on HBO Max? Let's take a look at that for a second. So Sinners was released on HBO Max a month after the digital release, right? The digital release was June 3rd. The HBO Max release was July 4th. So 1 month later, all right? How about Minecraft? June 20th was when Minecraft was released on HBO Max. So that's a little over a month from the May 13th digital release for that particular film. Okay, so we're looking at a month or a little over a month with respect to that. All right, so digital release August 15th. So we can expect the HBO Max on September 15th through the 22nd, right? That's if we're using the other Warner Brothers films that have followed this model, if we're using them as an example, we can gauge an idea of when they're going to release these things in different areas, right? So the digital release is happening on the 15th of August. The HBO Max release will probably be somewhere on the 15th or to the 22nd of September, right? Which of course will be far away. Like that, we'll be 4 weeks in. We'll be halfway through Peacemaker season 2 at that point, right? So what he said earlier on Threads about how it won't be anywhere close to HBO Max Superman is, won't be anywhere close to HBO Max in time for Peacemaker season 2. That is true. That is completely true. If you want to see Superman digitally before watching Peacemaker season 2, you'll have to buy it, right? Or rent it, after it comes out, because it probably will be available for that rental on the 15th. But either way, this is the new wave, guys. This is where we're going. And I hope that I've presented enough information and enough reference for you to at least get a better handle on this if you are somebody that's freaking out over the fact that this came out on digital so fast, right? This is the norm now. This is where we're headed. This is the industry, right? This is what Jurassic World Rebirth is doing. This is what Warner Brothers has done all year, right? And it's worked well for Minecraft. It worked well for Sinners. why should we believe that it won't work well for Superman? Seriously, like, why shouldn't we believe that? The amount of hype and praise that Superman has gotten from the general audience and from fans alike, the word of mouth has been strong enough, like on the level of like Minecraft and Sinners, truthfully, for it to succeed, to continue to succeed in these different areas. And when it comes to the whole monetary worries, you're going to have to start thinking about home release. You're going to have to start thinking about digital. You're going to have to think about those other numbers and not just pin everything on box office. That's old. That's antiquated. It's out to lunch at this point. Like, and the only people that are pinning everything on box office are the ones that have narratives to serve, the ones that want to twist the data to suit their own fantasies and their delusional ideas of Superman being a failure and James Gunn should be fired. Bring back the Snyderverse. Yeah, restore the Snyderverse. Yeah, those people. Do you want to think like those people? Do you want to agree with the Snyder cultists? Is that what you want to do? Because if you're somebody that's freaking out over this, or if you're somebody that thinks it should have released digitally later, then that means you're in some way, shape, or form agreeing with the Snyder cultists. You don't want to do that, do you? No, you don't. You don't want to do that. You want to keep a level head. You want to keep a rational head. And you want to see how the industry is changing. We already detailed how it's changing theatrically with respect to box office between domestic and international. We've already seen, what the experts have told us in terms of when the soonest we'll get back to pre-pandemic box office numbers. And now you're seeing the digital wave, right? Like how the evolution towards digital is continuing. And we'll see how these timetables work out. I think the way that they handled Minecraft and Sinners is a good gauge for how they're going to handle Superman. And that means that we're looking at potentially 81 days of release, 81 days of theatrical release. That means that we're looking at, if the physical Blu-ray is coming out on September 23rd, that means we're looking at HBO Max about a week or so before then. In between those ranges, like between the 15th and the 22nd, right? That's what we're looking at here with respect to potential success for Superman going forward. And that's just the nature of the business, guys. So it's time to reframe the conversations. I feel like a broken record saying that, but no, this is where we're at. And I feel like, if you want to still say that you question whether or not this is all going to work out, that is your business. I've already showed you how it worked out for Minecraft and how it worked out for Sinners, right? It is up to you if you wish to believe that it's not going to work out a similar way for Superman, right? If you think that it's not going to go the same way, that is your business, entirely your business. But Warner Brothers has done this before. They're following the same playbook that they've been following all year so far with their bigger hits, okay? Because both Minecraft and Sinners were hits for them. And Jurassic World Rebirth, who's also doing it, it's a hit for Universal, right? So the hit movies are doing this. This is where we're headed. This is what we're doing. Don't freak out. That's all I'm saying. Don't freak out. Just understand that the DCU is moving forward, and there are many reasons business-wise for Warner Brothers to do this, and this is the new wave. Something to get adjusted to. So remember that the next time you get freaked out over this. And you're seeing all manner of freak out and all manner of rage bots and engagement bots trying to get everybody to freak out over this and declare Superman a failure as a result of this. No bullshit. Superman's a hit. Superman is a success. Superman's going to continue motoring towards $600 million and probably still will make it. Now, it slowed down considerably, and whether this slows it down enough that it won't get to that 625 that Kitesh Pandya was talking about, I mean, we'll see. I don't know, but either way, it's still a success for DC Studios. It's still a success in terms of rebranding the character. They've been releasing the behind the scenes clips for it, and I'm trying not to watch all of them because I really do want to watch those special features that get released. I know I'm going to be waiting longer for it because I'm not getting the digital copy right now, and maybe I'll watch the digital, like behind the scenes stuff later when it gets posted. But I've watched a couple of the clips already, and there's a big one that I watched that I think is really awesome. If you don't get a chance, like some of the regurgitators have posted it, but James Gunn talked about the conversation. He talked about it on Happy Sad Confused with Josh Horowitz. He talked about the conversation that he and David Corenswet had about the big speech scene at the end of the movie between him and Lex, right? That big speech, for those of you that have seen the film. He talked about that, and he described exactly how that went. Well, if you want to see exactly how it went, if you want to see the video, if you want to see the actual video of them having that conversation that Gunn described, it's something else. It really is. Because truthfully, like, however you feel about James Gunn as a director and as a person, this is one of those times where you watch a video and it might change your mind. It might legitimately change your mind. Because when you see how this director handles an actor questioning what he's supposed to be doing with his emotions in a particular scene, and providing some, good-natured resistance. Like, isn't he supposed to be at this point? Isn't he supposed to be at that point? And you see how Gunn responds, right? Look at his behavior, and you can tell it's genuine, even though the cameras are on him. Right, this isn't acting. You can see that he is having a conversation with his actor, and they're both speaking from the heart. They're both just trying to get the scene right, but it's actually way more heartfelt than Gunn described in his description. And it's something else, right? And they show it juxtaposed with both him and Cornswet describing exactly how that process went down, and then you see the process go down as all the crew and everybody else are waiting for them to film this speech, right? It's really awesome. Like, I really like it. I can't wait to see all the other behind the scenes stuff, because it really seems like this was a very like inviting and a very collaborative set that everybody worked on with respect to this film, and the proof is in the pudding in terms of how great the movie was in that regard. But yeah, if you get a chance to see it, go ahead and check that out. But yeah, this is part of the marketing machine, guys. This is part of the DC Studios marketing machine. This is part of the new wave of release strategies for these studios. And you know what? Expect others to do this. We've seen Warner Brothers do this multiple times, and now they're doing it with Superman. We're seeing Universal do it. Expect Marvel and others to also follow suit as well with respect to this. It's the new wave of it. It is what it is. So accept it and adjust, or, sound like Snyder cultists. It's really kind of your options with respect to this if you're going on either extremes. You can find some middle ground. Maybe you still don't like the release window, but you understand why they're doing it. How about that? That's a nice middle ground in that regard. Remember, with respect to opinions, it's all subjective. And that concludes this episode of the Flightcast. I primarily wanted to talk about that, Superman's release date, and just address all the freak out and all the emotions and all the different thoughts and silly narratives that are being thrown out about it, and hopefully help you get to a better point of rationality and reasoning if you were somebody that was concerned, right? Just giving you some other perspectives from a business standpoint as to why this model, why Warner Brothers is doing it this way, and why the industry is changing toward this model. But as always, thank you so much for listening to the show. Thank you so much for supporting theflightcast.com. If you have any thoughts with respect to this, and I'm sure you do, if you have any thoughts with respect to movies, TV, and other sort of media, or anything with respect to what I presented and the timetables that we might see for Superman's releases going forward, you know where to find me on Threads and Instagram at The Flightcast, on Blue Sky at Flightcast. You can comment on the posting for this episode on the Flightcast YouTube page. There's also the Flightcast Facebook page, and of course I can be reached by email at ray@theflightcast.com. All right, take care, stay safe out there, have a great rest of the week, and I will see you all next time. Take it easy.